Hi, I'm DuEwa Frazier, and you're listening to a new episode of Nerdacity. And today I have a guest, a wonderful guest, a notable poet by the name of Roberto Carlos Garcia. Roberto Carlos Garcia is an associate professor of English at Union College of Union County, New Jersey. He writes poetry and prose about the Afro-Latinx and Afro-Diasporic experience. His work has been published widely in places like Poetry Magazine, NACLA, Poets and Writers, The Root, and others. Garcia is a 2023 New Jersey State Council of the Arts Poetry Fellow and the author of 5 books, 4 poetry collections: Melancolía, published by Cervena Barva Press; Black Maybe, and Afro-Lyric; Elegies, published by Flower Song Press; What Can I Tell You? Selected Poems; and one essay collection, his latest book, Traveling Freely, published by Curbstone Books, Northwestern University. Garcia is the founder of Get Fresh Books Publishing, a literary nonprofit. I hope you'll follow Nerdacity Arts on Instagram at Nerdacity Arts, or text us on X at NerdacityPod1, and visit my website at duewafrazier.com. Greetings, Roberto. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Hold on, I'm chilling.
Okay, awesome. So yes, this is an audio only interview, but if you want to have your camera on, you can, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah. So how's it going for you? Poet, traveler, traveling essays, professor. You got a lot going on.
Yeah, don't don't remind me. I'm like trying to find moments to just kick it and not have to do anything.
Mhm.
Publisher, right?
Publisher, let's not forget that. I just read that in your bio actually, and I'm most likely, and I can edit this part out, but most
Mhm.
likely I'm going to redo my intro. So I usually do the intro first, and then I bring the writer in so that it's all together. But sometimes I have to record it separately.
Oh,
So that's what I was doing, like trying to catch us both on at the same time.
oh,
But it's just fine. I can go back because I want to add some more stuff.
okay.
So, Roberto, I would love to hear about it. Just seems like we were just here a year ago or so when I last interviewed you. Yeah, you had What Can I Tell You? Selections, selected poems, excuse me, and you were promoting that well into 2023. And now
Mhm.
here we are with your latest book. Congratulations, Traveling Freely.
Thank you. Yes. I believe What Can I Tell You was published in like December of 22. So,
Mhm.
um, and even though like it was, I guess, supposed to be post-pandemic or just about post-pandemic,
Right.
right? Yeah, the promotion of the book, it was tough. It's been it was tough, but we did well. So I'm excited. Yeah, and at that time, interestingly enough, this book was under contract and Traveling Freely was under contract, and we were like, just working it out, doing revisions, edits, and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So yeah, it was a little process, but we finally got it out in October of 24.
Okay, so just this past fall then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And so, I'm putting the word out, trying to get the word out. A lot of just so many books dropped in that month that I had no idea, were coming out. And so, thankfully it's been a busy season for nonfiction. Uh,
Totally.
Edward Danticat, dropped a essay collection,
Right?
Ta-Nehisi Coates, Dion Brand. So it was
Mhm.
like, I was in good company, as they say.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I've picked up some new books, and I'm going to keep on picking up some great books for it's going to make for summer reading. Um,
Mm.
So tell me, Roberto, we know that you're also a poet. What was your inspiration to kind of dive into the nonfiction space in terms of a collection of essays?
So, each form has its, I guess, its parameters, right?
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of things I was trying to say that I couldn't say with poems, that I just wanted to be direct in a way that only prose could allow me to be. And I also wanted to not necessarily do it in this academic way, but I realized that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And then there's just a lot of folks who don't know certain things, maybe because reading can be a challenge for some communities, or just some people prefer to listen to things as opposed to read them. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna set out to write some essays, but I'm going to be as straightforward and direct as I can,
Hmm.
um, while still obviously trying to make the language, poetic. But then I also want to include secondary sources. I want to include the voices of other writers who have said what I am stating in different ways. But, as we know, there's nothing new under the sun. And so many of our great writers, whether they be James Baldwin, whether they be Toni Morrison, whether they be, on and on and on, this struggle, this fight has been going on for a long time. And so I wanted to give kind of an updated perspective on these issues, whether it be colorism, whether it be gentrification, whether it be police
Hmm.
violence, whether it be America's obsession with guns and gun culture and militarization. Um, I wanted to update these topics, not just in general, but also through my experience. And so I said slowly over time, I just kept writing essays, and a lot of them were published. Um, and before I knew it, I had about 15, 16 essays. Maybe I had more actually, but there's a culling process that goes on while you're putting the book together.
Right.
And so before I knew it, I felt like I had enough essays for a collection. And so I was encouraged, by my writer friends. Said, yeah, put it together, see what happens, get it out there. And lo and behold, it was picked up. So
That's amazing. Are you in a writing group, like an actual like writers group that kind of gets together regularly?
no, not the way I wish I was. No, I would love
Hmm.
to be in a group that way. But I do have many friends who are writers, and we do share work with each other from time to time, and we do have conversations about what we're working on. Um, I have a very dear friend who lives out in Colorado who just loves to read anything I write, and and we exchange stuff. Um, Sometimes it's a bit of a one-way street. She just loves to read what I write.
Okay.
It could be a bit of a one-way street sometimes, but
Right.
hopefully I make up for it in other ways.
It's nice to have those sounding boards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think no writer can get by um, without dear, good, loving friends, but also those friends, also listen to you and hear out what you're thinking. Yeah.
That's awesome. I have to. I am kind of like what do you say? Unofficially a part of some writers groups. I think I want to make more of an effort. I think my
Yeah.
podcast becomes like the way that I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
workshopping in thought when I talk to you all.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. And before you know it, it'll be revealed like what it is that does for you, right?
Mhm.
Pre-existing. It reveals itself. I truly believe that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, Roberto, how did you know when this collection was finished? How did you, I mean, and I know you've started a Substack and you're writing on Substack,
Mhm.
and you're probably writing all the time. So how did you know when to kind of say, okay, this is done, this is complete?
So, I sent it out a few different, I guess, versions and didn't get a lot of responses. And so I decided to look at it again. and I guess look at the themes to see how
Mm-hmm.
they're in conversation with each other. And so I realized that I was talking about two particular experiences. I was talking about being a part of the Afro diaspora that's from the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was also talking about things that impact me as an American. And so that's when I realized, oh, okay, so I have two different sections here.
Hmm.
And I need to put these. So the first section is the diaspora, right? And then the next section is This is America. And once I kind of realized that, I was able to rearrange the essays into these two sections and take out some of the essays that weren't necessarily working.
For
Uh,
either of those sections,
for
you're
either,
saying. Okay.
yes, for either of those
Okay.
sections. Because even though the sections are dealing with two separate, I guess, spaces, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
within those spaces there's overlap, right? There are intersections, whether that be, again, colorism, racism, gentrification, violence, the colonized mind, etc. And so once I was able to figure that out, it felt ready, it felt right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I sent the manuscript back out, that's when I started to get responses and there was interest. And so I said, okay, I have interest, so it's done from my perspective. Now I have to wait and see what an editor thinks and
Oh, I see.
you know.
Yeah. So did you wait until, so then that, I guess that's kind of answering my question, but for the listeners, did you wait to send it back out when you felt, okay, this is like perfect? Or did you
Uh,
still know, or was it kind of like, well, you know what? I know that there could be something that someone else might see, but let me just go on and send it
mhm.
because when is it ever going to be real perfect? Like a
Yeah,
it's almost like a writer's work is never done.
exactly. That's it. You know, poets often say we have to like let the work go, or else it's never gonna get out in the world because we could be there
Mhm.
nitpicking over a comma, nitpicking over a verb, a noun, an image, etc. And so it's the same thing, with the essays. I said, this is as far as I feel like I can take it. Otherwise, I may begin to hurt the manuscript.
Wow, that's interesting.
And
Mm.
that's something that happens. I think that, in particular with prose, it's very interesting. I'm sure some poets can say that it happens with poetry as well. But I think
Yeah.
with prose, it's very interesting because there's always some other idea you can get in there. But again, you're trying to create this cohesive, whether it's an argument or the cohesive meditation or exploration. And
Mhm.
so, even though you might think, oh, I need to put these other two or three ideas in here, I need to quote these other two or three people, in reality, they just don't belong in there. If you want to include other quotes, other voices, then you need to start writing something different sometimes. And
Wow.
and so early on in my undergraduate education in my literature courses, we used to read a lot of Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway.
Mhm.
Um, his interviews in particular, one of my professors really enjoyed his candor, and I guess his character, because he was like a character, right?
Right.
And so he would always say that every writer has to have a good built-in bullshit detector.
For okay, okay,
Yeah,
for his or her own work.
right. Yes.
Yes.
And so I found that concept like even really incredible. I said, yeah, that's so true. How do we get to that point? And then when I was working on my MFA, Aracelis Girmay said something to me very interesting. She said, have you achieved this detachment from your work where you can come back and look at it in the revision and not have that sentimental attachment to it where it's this baby that you can't touch. And I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, I gotta achieve that. So I always work with that in mind, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
that does.
I also, worked with Alicia Ostreicher, and she was big on that too, like, hey, she and I'll never forget.
Uh-huh.
One time she was like, "Oh, come on, this is bullshit. You know it's bullshit." And I was,
Oh
and I
my
was
goodness.
like,
And
and I was, and I was,
wow.
and I was like, you know what? It is, isn't it? I
You
said,
know
yeah,
what? It is. I'm
it
not gonna
is.
lie, it
It
is.
is. That's when I realized it. So, well, am I great at it? I don't know. Maybe I feel like I'm pretty good at it, but every day you get better. Every book you want to get better at spotting the BS
Hmm.
and cutting it out. Cut, you know.
Right.
Important to
And so, what do you hope to? Well, first, can you talk about some of the themes in your book? What are they really speaking to? And then, of course, hopefully, if you can, maybe after we discuss themes, if you can read an excerpt.
Sure. You know, it's so easy not to look at things in our world. It's so easy to ignore things that are happening. And I think that we, as a country, Americans have largely settled in to ignoring what does not impact them directly daily. We're in these silos. And so I really wanted to just look at all of these things in an unflinching way and try and demonstrate, through the personal, because, I use my own life as the entry point for a lot of these issues and themes and arguments. And so, in that way, really demonstrate that our own lives, are the mirror. Looking at our own lives is the mirror to the rest of our society.
Yes.
Just through reading the essays, it makes I would say it makes me a little sad that so much of what is happening now can be read through the essays. This
Mm,
rise of the right wing, this paranoia, this reversion of white supremacist ideology, which started in, like, I don't know, 2000, I'm gonna say 2008 when Obama was elected. I think that's what started all this backlash in America, but it was already on the rise in Europe. There were already these same actors who, and I think in the essay, give me one second and I'll go to the table of contents.
sure.
Allergies are they got me all kind of messed
Yeah,
up.
it's that time.
Um, the one where I think it's Trapped in History, where I travel abroad. Is where I talk about the rise of the right wing in Europe and how they got this foothold because of the migration, the refugees that were coming from Syria, etc. Right, and
Yeah,
so this kind of is spreading across the globe. Even in the global majority, we are seeing this rise of these regimes that um, disregard people's human rights, etc. And so it's no surprise that it would land right here in the United States. And so, people ignore it. People either fail to participate in our electoral process or they vote for a candidate ignoring isms and phobias because they're thinking about the economy. And it's like, oh my God.
right,
So it's like, people, if they feel they're not affected by something, they feel like it's okay to ignore it. And so what I really wanted was to make people see through reading the essays what's going on around them, right in their own neighborhoods.
right. Do you
Um,
think it's, can I ask you, do you think it's that people can't see or don't want to see, or do you think that people could be overwhelmed and filled with anxiety, almost crippling anxiety at this time?
I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
It's no one thing. And I'm sure that if we had other folks with us here on this call, they would probably think up of a couple of other reasons why they can't.
Hmm.
Another reason is that, a lot of people who are in the category of working poor are too busy spinning that hamster wheel, trying to
Mm,
balance everything,
exactly. Trying to survive.
trying to survive. And so there are many reasons. Um, but what I've found as someone who loves to read is that in any situation, you can find a book, a poem, a novel, or some kind of written word that will illuminate your situation to you.
So true.
So, right? And so I'm trying to write in that tradition, right? And that's kind of obviously I want it to make sense to me, which is one of the reasons why I began to write my way through it. Um, and so, I'm hopeful that the book can do that for folks.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for that, Roberto. And whenever you're ready, we'd love to hear an excerpt.
Anything in particular? Anything in particular? If not, I'll
Hmm.
but this one, what?
Um, do you have anything about self care or, well, whatever you think?
Um, I'll read this from Save the Babies, which is an essay that was published as part of a call to contribute to the conversation around the child separation that was going on at the border. Um,
Yes.
first, in the first Trump administration.
Oh, that was awful. Yeah, I remember that.
And, it continued straight through. It's not like it ever stopped, which is interesting to me. But here, yeah, I'll read this part here. This is from Save the Babies. When you know real American history, you're not surprised when the American government imprisons asylum seekers from South and Central American countries or targets immigrants from the Caribbean, East Asian countries, and African nations for deportation. When you know real American history, you are not surprised when children are separated from their parents and when both are put into cages, nor are you surprised to learn that prison corporations and weapons manufacturers are profiting from all of it. The American government, for over 100 years, separated thousands of Native American children from their parents and communities and sent them to assimilation camps benevolently known as boarding schools. The children were forcibly stripped of their language and identity and were punished for being demonstrably indigenous. Horror stories of rape, physical abuse, and the terror of being removed from their families have all been documented. Americans' excuse at that time, come now. Can't you hear them already? We're civilized white people, or this is a Christian nation, or perhaps the most telling, we have to resolve the Indian problem, a uniquely American habit, create the problem of dislocated indigenous people by stealing their land and then terrorize them as part of the solution. More Americans should read so as not to be in a constant state of shock. During slavery, children were stolen from their enslaved parents and sold off as a standard business practice. Countless generations scattered across the country to traumatize and destroy Black people's sense of humanity. America still hasn't come to grips with its racist past or present. The history is there. Go and read it. By not acknowledging history, Americans have always given themselves a way out of truly caring. As a kid, I saw social services take children away from their parents for the crime of being poor. Since America treats addiction like a crime, I've also seen my fair share of families destroyed by government agencies and the judicial system. Disenfranchised African American and Latinx children are ripped from struggling families and many times put into even more dangerous environments. Sure, some lives have been saved, but in too many cases, children died. Forgive me or don't, but I'm calling bullshit on fake outrage. When Melania Trump sauntered onto a plane to visit children held illegally at an immigration prison, she proudly wore an army green coat that read, I really don't care. Do you? Her act remains not only immeasurably cruel and immensely stupid, but more importantly, telling. The whole administration spoke through that code. And the villains asked us the most important question of all: do you really care?
Wow. As you read that, Roberto, I literally could just see like a lot of the headlines and the news pieces and the videos and just the way we all lived and watched in horror
Mm-hmm.
of how the children and families were being treated as if they weren't even human beings.
Yeah. And continue
Um,
to be treated, I think, is the and these every time these sycophantic people that the administration has in places of incredibly sensitive and important decision making, right? They keep saying, "Oh, wait till you see what's coming. Wait till you see what's coming." And yeah, I'm not trying to condemn or judge people who made a decision not to vote. Um, based on the situation,
mhm,
many people decided not to vote because neither side would take a clear stand on Palestine and Israel, and
mhm.
I respect that because there's a genocide happening there. Um, but we cannot serve anyone if there's a genocide happening here too. So I
Yes,
I don't know. I think, man, we are a country that can we live in a country where as citizens we cannot afford apathy, especially not when it comes to these very, very dangerous Republicans. Very dangerous.
hmm. That was such a beautifully written um, essay, but the excerpt is really speaking to the sentiment that a lot of people have at this time, Roberto. And so I really appreciate what you're doing, putting your thoughts on the page, making it something that will stand for the rest of time. Certainly, that students can read and educators and others can utilize as a handbook, really.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
that's the
yeah,
goal. Yeah, that's the goal. I find that as a teacher, I find that my students have questions, they have ideas, they're trying to test their understanding against what it is that they're seeing, and I just, so many writers have helped me understand I'm not crazy, that what I'm seeing is what I'm really seeing.
right.
And so, I also was trying to write the book in that tradition as well.
That's wonderful. And Roberto, how are you best reaching your audience at this time, whether they are fellow writers, students, faculty, libraries, um, various groups, organizations who would want to support this kind of work? What is your, I guess, has been or will be your outreach?
Well, I've ensured, I wanted to ensure that my publisher got this book into as many libraries as possible. So
Yeah,
I've been comforted to know that the New York Public Library not only has copies of the book, but they have a friend of mine was walking past the 42nd Street branch of the New York Public Library and
whoa, that's the big, beautiful main
yeah.
one. Yes.
Yeah, and they saw my book on the display case in the window, and
You are kidding.
they immediately, sent me pictures and were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great."
Whoa, that is major, Roberto. Next up, Today's Show. Speak it.
It's very neat, I enjoy that was dope. That was a dope feeling.
Yeah.
And I also have friends, colleagues, and friends and acquaintances who teach, who are like, my students loved this essay. We talk about that. And because through the poetry, I've visited a lot of universities and colleges and organizations. So I'm grateful that there's folks on the lookout for what are you publishing next? And it makes it, having essays, I think makes it a little easier
Yes.
in the classroom because
Right.
people have a reluctance to poetry in America. Even though we have wonderful nonprofit organizations and nonprofit publishers and educators that are teaching poetry, there's still this reluctance, and we need to do a better job with that. But the essay is this kind of universal thing in a classroom.
Yes.
Right? That has been wonderful.
I can say for true. They can go ahead and call that. They can use that as a textbook. They can
Hmm.
say this is going to be one of our model texts.
Yeah, I mean, hey, your lips to God's ears, let's go.
Right.
And so, and obviously, doing readings locally, and traveling and stuff like that. So that's been a lot of fun as well. But to anyone listening, I am willing to come visit your college classroom virtually or in person and obviously talk about the work.
Well, that's awesome. And I will make note of that, Roberto. I really appreciate that. And so, Roberto, what are you excited about? What's coming up next for you, whether it's your next reading or giving a talk or some other community initiative that you're a part of? Really let us know.
I have a Instagram live coming up with Leslie Ann Murray, a
Mhm.
girl book lover, and that should be a lot of fun.
Oh,
We
yeah.
we did a reading at the reading series that they have in New York, and people really enjoyed the essays. And I'm 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 trying to finish this semester strong for my students, obviously. And one of my I guess my chief concerns is to empower them and let them know that until the world tells you, okay, you have to stop and do something else, whether that be, fight for your liberation, etc. You keep coming to school and performing well academically as if the world intends to continue, you know?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I have a couple of things lined up that aren't necessarily solidified yet, so I won't go into talking about them now, but
Sure.
uh, you
But
know,
we'll see it on Instagram.
yes, you will. Yes, you will. But I'm also doing manuscript consultations, poetry manuscript consultations for a fee,
Mhm.
obviously, but trying to help folks work on, improve their manuscripts and get their work out there. We need that, especially as this administration goes to war against nonprofits and anyone supporting, writers of color, writers from the LGBTQ plus community, writers from the differently abled communities, etc.
Mhm.
We need to find ways um, to survive, obviously, put food on the table, but then also to give back, right? And so those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
Well, that sounds fantastic. So you're definitely heading into still yet a busy season,
Mm.
productive and heading in the summer. Do you do many readings during the summer?
Yeah, I love to just get out in front of people and read and talk to them about the work. That's really something that's satisfying for me because that's how I came to books. Is especially in poetry, reading poetry collections, going to the readings, getting to meet the poets and talk about the work. And so I love when I can do that and that happens. I'm also working on some fiction, which is very time consuming. Shout out to novelists and short story writers. Because man, it's hard. Like you gotta
Mhm.
really, really sit there and lock in. So
Right.
I'm working on that. And finding ways to be present for folks who might need me one on one.
Sure.
But also, finding the strength and the humility and the resolve to ask for help when I need it, you know,
Hmm.
because I think that's something a lot of us, carry a certain amount of pride. And during times like these, as writers, we're very sensitive people. We're sensitive to the pain and suffering and hurt that we see out in the world. And so not only seeing a genocide live streamed on social media every day, but then also enduring this barrage of like this psychological attacks with this breaking news. Trump does this.
Yeah.
News.
That's why I personally I take breaks from
Oh,
social media. I just can't. It's a lot. Even though it's people that I know that post, but still, we now see more people that you don't follow, that
yeah.
things are popping up, and it's like, oh my god, like it's a lot coming
Mhm.
at you, and it's energy, and
Mhm.
it's a lot, Roberto.
Too much.
Whew, yes,
And even the news, because what's really wild is, okay, social media will give you these very raw takes, like this is how this is hurting me. This is what's happening over here. This is how it's hurting our community. And then you turn on the news and they're just trying to normalize everything. And
right.
I find myself cursing out the news. Like, you
Hmm.
guys are full of it. You know what I mean? Like, look how y'all trying to clean this up, and it's
Hmm.
just terrible. It's just terrible. And sadly, there's young people too who are, our young people are divided because there are young people who just don't know their parents are, teaching them certain things that are incorrect. I mean, because they're
Hmm.
humans, but they
Right.
that with them in the class in the classroom, and they make their fellow students feel uncomfortable, and now there's tension there, and so
Wow.
see it,
Yeah.
I see it all day, and I see it everywhere, and so it's like, yeah, trying to. You said self-care, and I'm like, yeah, trying to care.
Yeah. And I probably shouldn't.
No, what
I
do you
didn't mean and I didn't mean
mean?
like, oh, go take a nap, or I guess like,
Yes, take
but
a
to be
nap.
honest, we're talking about I mean, we are speaking on that, like how you maybe become more discerning about what you're taking in, the media and
Yes,
information that you're going to pay attention to.
yes, because I watched a documentary on climate change with my students in
Mhm.
English 101. And it was interesting. We were watching this part where the documentarian goes to the Amazon rainforest and shows how beautiful everything is, etc. And then he shows the part where people are cutting down the rainforest. And he's interviewing the indigenous people of the Amazon, and one guy's just heartbroken. He's like, people are obsessed with this idea of money, but what we have here in this rainforest, he was saying, these are our herbs, these are our medicines, this is our food, this is the wood we use to build our homes.
Mhm.
We're part of this ecosystem, and they chop down our trees, our plants. They chased away our birds, our animals. So, and it's just so touching. And then, the documentary ends, and one of my students like, man, I'm so sad now, right?
Mhm.
And a couple of people were like, I know. And I was like, well, that's a natural response. I said, but be angry.
Right.
I said, because being angry will give you agency.
Right.
Rage gives you agency.
Mhm.
Sadness,
Then you'll want to do something.
right?
Yeah.
Sadness will get you in your feelings, and you'll feel overwhelmed, like you
You'll
can't.
internalize it. It can become depression.
Yes,
Yeah.
but be angry. So again, I gotta tune in. I gotta know what's going on. Sure, it's okay to feel sad for a minute or so,
Mhm.
but then I have to be angry. My response has to be, this can't stand, you
Yeah.
know? And so I have to figure out ways to resist, encourage others to resist, and do it without playing into, the aggressor or the oppressor's hand.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at, because I'm not gonna sit on my hand. Whether I write about it, whether I get out and talk about it, um, this is the way I can resist. Whether I publish folks who are doing it, this is the way I can resist, and I have to resist.
That's wonderful, Roberto. And we really appreciate all the work that you're doing, your insight and your intentionality with your work, and how you are getting it out in the community. And certainly, I'm sure your fellow colleagues and peers and students really do appreciate it as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope
And
so.
so, Roberto, do you want to? I know I've interviewed you before, but can you give all of your details, information on how we can best follow you? Certainly, how we can pick up Traveling Freely, your latest collection of essays, how we can support your work.
Sure. If you go to the Northwestern University Press website, you can buy it that way. That helps me, obviously, because
Yes.
being bought directly from the publisher ensures that I can survive. But you can find it anywhere books are sold. And my website is robertocarlosgarcia.com. And I'm mostly on Instagram, and it's Roberto is off world or Roberto Carlos Poet. And yeah, I usually post everything there, you know.
Hmm.
You can
You
email
have
me.
two, I think you have two Instagrams, Roberto. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct. I actually
Sometimes I'm trying to tag you and I see a different one pop up, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll tag that one.
I have the first one was private for a long time. I had to make it private because I talk a lot about the issues that are happening in Dominican Republic,
Hmm.
the elites and the current presidential administration targeting Dominicans of Haitian descent and targeting Haitian laborers that come to the island at the invitation of corporations on the Dominican side of the island. And their labor is exploited because they won't pay them. It's like what happens here in the US, you know. They won't pay Dominicans what the standard salary is according to what the government has decreed. They'll pay Haitian laborers less. And so what they've done is, created this tension and this anti-Haitian sentiment. So I write a lot about that in the book and my poems, etc. And so I had to make that one private just because of, blowback I was receiving because of that. But luckily that's kind of settled down. And so I said, well, I'm publishing a new book. I better go ahead and make this public for now. I'm sure I'll make it private again soon, but yeah, that's why you see the two.
Maybe I can get your advice on that one day about, do you want to be
Hmm.
public, with your profile? I'm just kind of,
Yeah,
being
no,
protective.
yeah, it's valid. As a publisher, I tell our poets that anybody who we sign to publish their book, I often encourage them to create a public profile just for their work and to keep their personal page private. If they post, pictures of their kids, if they, when they're traveling, etc. If they don't
Mhm.
want folks to know that stuff, keep your page private and create one that's front facing just for your books or for your
Just for
work.
your books. Yeah.
Because whether we like it or not, this is how people engage with us. Um,
Yeah.
people, there's
It's just some people that you may not desire to engage with you, I guess.
of course, but then you have all the control, right? Because
Yeah.
you can block, etc., and you know that your private or your personal space is there. And another misconception is that you got to be posting all the time. That's not true either. You're in control, and I think we need to recognize that these tools, we control these tools. These tools don't control us.
Don't control us.
Mhm.
That's right. Very wise words, and thank you for that. We just also got some social media training by Roberto Carlos Garcia. Roberto, I certainly wish you well with your latest book. Congratulations again, and kudos to all the wonderful work you're doing in being such a valuable and positive member in our literary and arts community. And thank you for joining me on Nerdacity. And I look forward to more of what you will create and contribute in the near and distant future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.